Hello and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Bonnie. This is episode 74, and we're pumped to be breaking down The Boys Season 3 finale. I'm also sad to announce that Battlefield Mike Smith is going to step away from the show. He was an integral part of the show, and we wish him all the best as he moves to the Ringer Podcast Network. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask Battlefield Mike for a refund.
Incredible!
Hey, it's good to see you guys. Welcome. Savon, how you doing today?
I'm doing just great. It's a beautiful Detroit summer. I'm recording with the boys. We're gonna.
I don't
talk
know
about
what
the boys.
Detroit summer is. Is it hot, cold?
Is it
What's going on
beautiful?
there? Yeah.
Yeah, Detroit summers are actually really nice, dude. Especially coming from New Orleans, where the summers are just objectively awful experiences. No, so the weather here, it's pretty consistently in like the 70s, 80s. I'm near the Detroit River, so I get I get a lot of wind in general.
Raise your hand if you didn't know Detroit had a river.
Yeah,
Detroit has a river?
Dude, I can see.
What's in it?
Dude, I can see the Detroit River from my apartment window. I can see Canada from where my apartment
Is it
window.
better
Is
or
it
worse
neon
than the
green?
Mississippi?
Dude, the water out here in Michigan in general is blue. Like when I first went to the Detroit River to look at it, I'm like, yo, this water is blue. What is it? And I'm like, oh wait, I'm from Louisiana where I've never seen a blue body of water in my life. So it's just a foreign concept.
All right, this is not Planet Earth. We're done with this conversation.
Sorry,
I love
it's
it.
lit up there.
I
It's lit
did
up
love
there.
it.
You
I
asked
did
me.
love it. I do want to visit. Brian,
And we got lakes.
how you doing?
I'm all right.
Lakes.
I'm back. Welcome back to myself. Thank you.
Nice. And as I said in the intro, Mike is going to go ahead and leave the show, so we wish him all the best. He's just got a lot of things going on. Maybe in the future we'll leave the door open that he could return. He'll bring his youthful exuberance and energy and hot takes with him.
I do have a theory, though. I have a feeling that Mike, after convincing Savon to go ahead and play Horizon Zero West, after not finishing the first
He was
one,
like, I've reached the
and then
the
subsequently
pinnacle.
doing the same thing for The Last of Us, which we did off podcast.
And
I
Elden
think
Ring.
he's done. Like
He was like, there's nowhere else to go from here.
he's like, I got to go out on top. This is my time.
This is Jordan after the third ring. Or maybe after the sixth one. He's just like,
Time to go play baseball.
It's too easy, folks. It's too
oh,
easy.
God.
It could be. So, Mike, we wish you all the best. We'll miss you. We'll miss you greatly. And me and Mike started this podcast two years ago, I think, at this point. And it was just a dream. We did a podcast on Cats, the movie, Judi
What?
Dench's movie.
Wait, really?
It never saw the light of day.
It shouldn't.
I'm pretty sure that's episode 2. And if you go through our feed way into the back, episode 2 and I believe 3 are missing because those shows were not good.
Subscribe to our Patreon to get access to this bonus content.
Send me a $10 check. I'll hook you up. Promise.
There's an NFT version of episode 2. There can only be one owner.
Never released. All right. So we're going to get into The Boys. One of my favorite shows of the year, I think, so far. We got a huge finale, episode 9, I believe it was. Was there 9 episodes this time? It was kind of a random
I think it was 8.
It was 8? Okay. Well, we got a huge finale. Tons of things were going on. A lot of revelations were happening in the past couple of episodes at the end there. How did it wrap up for you? What did you think? Man, that final fight was just chaotic. Savon, how are you feeling about the end of The Boys season 3? Are we on
Season 3.
Season 3.
Oh, man. So it's wild, right?
Also, this is spoilers very full. So if you haven't seen it yet, now's the time. Turn off. Come back when you finished it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm conflicted because the last 2 episodes were it was just such a wild extreme, right? We have the Hero-gasm episode, which I think we all went in thinking it was just going to be a wild sex party, which wasn't wrong, but that was clearly not the focal point of the episode. We got to get one of the best just throwdowns in a fight, a good old-fashioned 3-on-1 Royal Rumble with Homelander really eating his first licks. And we get the father-son revelation at the end, and that week was very stressful waiting. And so that second to last episode, I'm like, yo, this is peak The Boys TV show in terms of taking the comics and then building it and changing it into something just sensational for TV. And then the finale comes, and I was just so disappointed. I was so let down. I felt like it suddenly felt like everybody was drinking crazy juice and decided, hey, I'm gonna just make decisions that are totally out of character because the plot needs it to happen. And so while it was fun to watch, I couldn't help but feel like the season ended with me kind of leaving me scratching my head wondering, hey, what are we doing here?
Yeah, there was on our Instagram, for those of you that follow our Instagram,
hit us up at confidently_pod.
I believe we asked the audience how they felt about that finale, and one of the responses was everybody just ended up where they started. And I couldn't help. I saw that before I watched the final episode, and I could not get that out of my mind watching the finale.
Really?
And so I kind of had the same feeling as Savon, right? We, in the penultimate episode, Hero-gasm, and that 3-on-1 fight, they just almost had Homelander, and he escaped by the skin of his teeth. And then we get to the final fight where all sorts of stuff is happening, but what felt like no reason, like all of a sudden Homelander's kid is there, and Butcher is the one fighting with Soldier Boy, and that's kind of a meh fight anyway. And all that build-up in tension that we were getting very close to Homelander, suddenly all the focus is all over the place, and it's barely on Homelander in that last episode. And I just couldn't help but feel like they shot their load the previous episode and had nothing much to offer in the final episode except reset the board so they could do it all over again for season 4.
Yeah, so, were you looking for, okay, finally it's been 3 seasons, it's time for Homelander to be maimed, injured, dead, something at this point? It's like, hey, you can't keep the will or won't they going for this long.
Yeah, probably not dead, but something to change the way that we perceive Homelander and what he's going to mean for the rest of the series. To change the dynamic somehow, and I don't think we really got that at all.
Yeah, similar feeling, right? And it's not even I need someone to be maimed or dead, but again, it's how they got there. It was the character decisions. I was really upset when you finally have Soldier Boy and Homelander meeting. It's ready for it to be a showdown. Homelander makes very valid points. Soldier Boy makes like his decision to be like, F that. It also makes sense from what we learned about his character a little before. But then suddenly Maeve and Butcher, who were both totally like, hey, scorched earth, we need to end this. They've done horrendous things leading up to this. Suddenly have a change in heart. And then the way it all played out was like, hey, y'all could have gotten the kid out of there and still fought Homelander. There's just ways that situation could have gone where they still put the emphasis on Homelander, and everybody's suddenly deciding that Soldier Boy is just a bigger threat. I'm like, have we all not watched the last 2 seasons of this show? As crappy as the show tries to clearly make Soldier Boy, and I think they wanted to do with Soldier Boy what they did with Stormfront in the previous season of them being a new secondary character who still is really crappy, and they do that, but in the context of Homelander versus Soldier Boy, I think we could all comfortably say, hey, Homelander's the bigger problem and the bigger threat, right? And so if we, the audience, can see that, and these characters who've been directly hurt by Homelander suddenly decide, no, actually not, I'm like, what's going on? Maeve was the only one who really did what she was supposed to do, and frankly, hers was motivated out of personal beef, not Homelander's the bigger problem. She just don't like that dude. So that was clearly just a salt fest, which I'm okay with, but I'm like, Starlight, Butcher, what the hell are y'all doing? Y'all can deal with Soldier Boy later. Soldier Boy can't fly. Homelander can fly. Like, let's just prioritize. Like when I play
and laser vision.
Yeah, like, dude, come on, pick your targets. Y'all played enough fighting games or any game where, hey, take down this is who's the bigger threat. If you don't deal with him, he's gonna sneak the whole squad.
And Butcher knows in that moment that the Compound V is killing him.
I didn't mind it so much that those choices that they made, other than it was like, no, because Homelander was going to get away. That's how I felt about it. I understood why they didn't want Soldier Boy to go nuclear in the middle of the room, because they thought that would hurt Ryan. And Butcher's whole thing has been really about trying to protect Ryan at any cost. In addition to getting rid of Homelander, but he's sort of been subsumed by this vow or pact that he made with, what was her name? The mom?
Becca.
The mom.
With the mom from, last season. So to me, it made sense why he was like, wait. You can handle Homelander another time. And Soldier Boy was like, no, it's now or never. Like, you've got him right here. We need to end this right now, and he deserves to die. So
Soldier Boy at least stuck to the plan. That's why I was really upset. He's the only person out of the whole show who stuck to the plan. Everybody else
but the plan didn't involve Ryan.
Look,
you got to change. You got to change the plan when new factors come in. I mean, that's normal.
But here's the part that I guess really irked me in the end, and it retroactively made that scene even worse. They were very inconsistent on how dangerous Soldier Boy's chest radiation blast was. Right, Kimiko, when she gets hit by it, she gets hurt really bad, loses her powers, doesn't die, but she's in the ICU. Okay, she has to bounce back. Cool. Crimson Countess, absolutely obliterated. The TNT twins at the Hero-gasm, absolutely obliterated. Maeve, who, even though we've established, and this is like a power scaling issue too, right? But it starts to feel like plot armor when you look at it closely. Maeve doesn't die. Okay, fine. You can get away with it. Her being, okay, she's a really strong suit. Maybe she could eat that blast, but still loses her powers. I'll let him get away with that. But if that's the case, then hell, y'all should have let him blast Homelander and the kid. Homelander's more durable than every character we've seen, and so people can live through it. Worst case scenario, like best case scenario, he dies. Worst case, okay, he loses his power still, and the boy might not die and lose his powers too if he has the same. It was a power scaling issue that.
Well, but they don't know what the boy's powers are. I don't even know if Butcher knows he has powers.
Yeah, they do. They all know he has powers. That's the whole reason that
pretty
they don't know. But they don't know what his powers are or what the extent of it is.
They do. They know it's Homelander's power set because they know that he has laser beams. They know he can fly. They know he's invulnerable.
Is he invulnerable? Didn't he break his arm?
No, season 2 specifically, Homelander threw the boy off the roof because he said, "Yo, you're going to be fine," and he was fine. He was just freaked out in the head. Like we've known, that's the whole fear behind the boy is that he has Homelander's power set, but is a kid. So you don't want him to be groomed by that kind of person. That's the whole fear behind it. But inconsistent power scaling and plot armor made it to where certain characters clearly can live through the beam and others can't. And especially when you make it to where Maeve lives at the end, it's like, oh, where if she lives, not like she died. If she had actually died, I would have been more okay with it because it establishes Soldier Boy's thing as a threat to Soups, but she lived. So I'm like, oh, if she lived, then they should have just let him. That's the first thing I thought when Maeve was alive. I'm like, oh, if she's alive, they should have just let him blast Homelander. We would have just been done. And then we just roll credits. Let's call it a day.
Yeah.
After that, he's just a dude.
It made sense to me that Kimiko survives because she has the super healing. So, and we know that she can
she loses.
And she can take a ton of licks, right? So maybe in that moment where she's getting blasted, her healing kind of helps protect her a little bit. But yeah, and then she loses her power. So it takes her obviously a really long time for her to get back to healthy again.
Wes, every main character who got hit by that blast lived. And every non-main character who got hit by it died, including all our heroes avoiding it at Hero-gasm. And at a certain point, it's like, y'all, status quo is what comes up with me for this season a lot, and they just refuse to shake it up.
All right.
Yeah, the core of Homelander's character is that he is life-threatening, right? We see him destroy other suits.
Yeah.
And if that sort of threat doesn't exist for our main characters, then it really undercuts him as a threat and throws off the thrust of the show. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest problems of this finale.
They're willing to kill everybody except a main character, and then it's like, come on, you got to go there. You got to go anime. Like, let's have it. You can't keep it like Hasbro cartoons.
Yeah, they don't want to kill off their moneymaker characters because they know Homelander's so great to hate, but they didn't. It played out poorly on screen, especially at the end. Well,
what you guys are saying makes me like the season or the episodes at the end less, because I think you're right. I didn't notice it in real time though. To me, I still loved how all of the chaos was happening, all of the beatdowns were happening, the intrigue, the Huey and Starlight having to figure things out, MM's struggle with like how he was going to handle this thing. He doesn't have powers, but he's willing to go in and then try and figure out what he can do. All of that stuff was just, I thought, really engaging. I couldn't look away. And even if the end result, maybe like you guys said, wasn't, phenomenal, it still to me was a great like arc of the season. And one of the questions that we wanted to talk about today was, does them starting at the same place matter, right? And so you're saying like, if this is just, we reset the board, did anything really happen? And I think because we see all the emotional ups and downs that all of these characters have been through, I do think it's different. The characters are different emotionally, even if maybe in some ways they're still in the same place. But we finish with the boys actually not willing to just put up with Butcher anymore as a dictator. And that's a big change for how their dynamic is going to work moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
We also still have, all these other... and I don't know, do we know if Soldier Boy is like dead?
He's not dead.
No, he's alive.
He's very much going to be a MacGuff. His power stripping ability clearly is going to be important in the finale of the show, because now the U.S. government has him and can study him.
That's right.
He was in the pod.
They put him in a chamber.
Yeah. So, and you saw it was not Stillwell. Grace Mallory. Yeah. Grace Mallory,
the general lady.
Yeah. So she she works for the U.S. government, and now they have Soldier Boy and they can study. So clearly they're gonna work on some Homelander contingencies.
Let's hope so. But I think just because Homelander is such a threat and he's so all over the place, and there was this introduction of the new storyline around Soldier Boy and Soldier Boy's history, and then how that played in with Black Noir, all of that, I don't know. I don't mind that we're quote unquote back to where we started, given all of the things that we saw, given all of the emotions that were had, and the stories that were told within each episode were just, I just really thought it was really well done. I'm hesitant to say I loved it because everything was so depraved, but it was just really, really great to watch.
Just say you enjoy that stuff, Wes. Embrace the depravity.
Yeah, because everything you're saying, I don't disagree with it. Like the way they executed the stories, everybody's arcs, like it was still, I still love this season. It was great to watch. And even the finale fight, that was a fun scene to watch. It was just from a writing perspective, not an actual on-screen what they're doing. Like I was entertained. It was more so just hey, this is entertaining what y'all be doing on screen. This needs to be happening to Homelander.
Yeah, but I think that was like to me that was part of it, is that we're not going to kill Homelander now because there's this other thing at stake, which is Ryan, and we know how important Ryan is to a couple of the characters.
Man, somebody could have ran off with Ryan. They could have had one of the useless regular people run off.
Do you really have time? None of them have super speed. But it's just have time to do that.
Watch that again on screen, bro. You can just watch it and see like, hey, there's at least y'all had enough time to do not that.
Someone should have tried at the very least.
No one even,
and it would have made it more interesting.
Yeah, but Ryan wanted to stay. I mean, that's also part of it. Ryan is clearly like, I'm on Homelander's side on this one.
I mean, I do agree with you that the relationships and the dynamics are really the core of this show that make everything so scintillating and work. The relationships have changed a little bit. And, as much as I'm kind of decrying the fact that they reset the board, at least there are some interesting dynamics that they can play with moving forward. I am looking forward to seeing an older Ryan and seeing what him and Homelander might look like together.
The new Atreus.
Yeah, I mean, they do real life time skip for the show. So
I'm going to hate him.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be very frustrating and upsetting to watch on screen, I'm sure, because it's the boys.
Well, what character arc did you guys enjoy during this show, or what kinds of things did you take away from the whole season?
I mean, A-Train and MM for me were high points. one thing I always keep
Go
an eye
for the
out
black characters, Vonnie.
No.
How on the brand.
Come on now. But I'm very critical and observant of when shows, one, if they choose to have multiple black characters, because it's an easy way to be lazy and tokenize that we got our one black character, cool, call it a day. And really for any minority group. So I'm always mindful of that. So I already appreciated that The Boys has like two black characters who have prominent roles in the show from both like an antagonist and protagonist lens. And they don't whitewash their blackness from their characters, but they still have very unique and distinct experiences. A-Train from that of someone who has come up from maybe not having much, but now exists in a position of power and privilege and, you know, having to reconcile with how he's hurt people. And, you know, Wes, you said it yourself well, of just trying to be apologetic, but not do the emotional work in the process. I thought that was a great arc to watch, because you can tell he's trying, but also you as the viewer know, hey, bro, that's not going to cut it. You know, you have to, like, you really hurt people. And then, so just watching that arc play out and him really losing everything, and now
he loses his brother. His brother kicks him out.
Yeah, and his brother, you know, like, the brother was always a nice character to watch and watch them bounce off each other, but I really felt that. It was like, hey, you know, he said, I don't want a murderer in the house. I'm like, yo, that's real. Like, I could really, you know, their siblings who definitely would say, hey, yo, you killed somebody. This is, you know, in my name. No, we're done. And that really hurt, and it was hard, but good to watch. And then
what a different standard too, right? Because in most of the interactions, people have murdered many people, and we've seen many murders on screen, and nobody has been excommunicated or cut off socially because of that. And we're like, oh yeah, this is the real world where people still view murder as bad. It's just these particular group of people have lived in their own bubble for so long they fail to see it.
Yeah, which, you know, kind of grounds the show a little bit. And then MM as well. MM was always an interesting character because he was always probably the character in the show with the most heart. Mm-hmm. But still, the last two, and still so, in the last two seasons in particular, have done a great job of just really, I love his on-screen, like, anxiety, him having his, like, how they portray his anxiety and his OCD tendencies and how it flares up depending on what his character's going through. I just thought it was really just good acting, good writing, and his entire thing of being honest with his trauma and mental health. And, like, it really went there with what I thought was just a good, like, hey, you're a black man who needs to watch your mental health storyline, and him reconciling it and not letting rage consume him. Like, those were not superpower-based stories, but watching them on screen was some of my favorite parts of the show.
I think MM's real superpower is coming up with a new 90s rap t-shirt every single
Oh my God, yes.
Like, his wardrobe is just infinite.
Fire.
It's like, what's the next one going to be? Oh, damn, I didn't know he had that one.
The Drip Lord.
Brian, what was your favorite character arc?
Probably the Deep with his octopus.
The Deep, that was the weakest. Oh, that was hilarious.
No. It's kind of hard to say.
Down your hill.
I agree that A-Train and MM were really interesting. Shout out to A-Train for apologizing for a murder during an orgasm or during an orgy.
Well, Huey did like straight up force the issue.
He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." While there's
everybody else getting it in,
off-screen stuff happening. I think, in addition to the ones that Savon mentioned, you know, to some degree, like maybe Huey's character arc was one of the best, right? Just in the way that he was dealing with his relationship with Starlight, and he's had to come to terms with his gender norms, right? And his heteronormative relationship standards and whatnot, and trying to protect her and feeling weak in the relationship and doing that sort of thing. And what that was forcing him to do, and coming into terms with all of that. I think that is an interesting thing. Huey, to me, is not the most compelling character generally, but I like to see that kind of challenge for a character happening and unfolding on screen. I think a lot of the people on the show have said in interviews and stuff that the season is very much about toxic masculinity. And we saw it on a variety of different levels. Right? And so Huey's is on that interpersonal romantic relationship level where, which is very dangerous. And then on the flip side of that, we get Homelander's version of it as he continues to morph into something more than just more than just this kind of Captain America, Superman proxy, but he's also now in a position of a media mogul who realizes that he can terrorize people by the end of the season and be applauded for it. So I think that is a interesting evolution on his character, right? And taking him to new extremes and starting to look a lot more and more like other people in the news that we know.
Mm-hmm. Orange colored people.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I'm excited because he had that whole. I love the inner monologue. Anthony Starr, shout out to him, great actor. His facial expressions and crazy eyes are top tier.
His face is so weird though. His mouth does things that make me uncomfortable.
Yeah, but I loved his inner monologue between himself, and he had that whole bit about, hey, you need to kill that last bit of humanity in you. And then I love how you have him try to go through that, but now he actually has his son again. And so how is that gonna, like, I don't think his whole kill the last of his human in him, I don't think that's gonna go away. So how is that gonna manifest with his relationship with his son? Brian, to your point, in a show about toxic masculinity, you know, is the cycle gonna repeat itself and he's gonna be like, you know, a worse version of what Soldier Boy was? I don't know. It's gonna be an exciting dynamic to see play out.
Well, you took all my talking points because I wanted to talk about toxic masculinity and the way it showed up in actually all of the characters and the way that they dealt with it. So we'll just keep it moving.
Wait, can we talk briefly about how Soldier Boy and Homelander are both so egregiously awful, but they're like, if there was a Venn diagram of just their awful trait, there's almost no overlap, but they're still awful. Like, I really sat and was just like, okay, how is he awful? Okay, how is he awful? And I'm like, they're awful in completely opposite ways. Like, this show made me realize, wait a sec, Homelander's sober. Wow. Like, for all the things you can say about Homelander and other characters in the show, that man is never drinking or doing drugs. May even Starlight get lit. You know, A-Train abuses Compound V. You know, people do all kinds. Homelander does not do drugs. And it wasn't until I saw Soldier Boy snorting pills, smoking weed, just drinking by the handle. I was like, oh. You know, just having depraved sex with just, you know, sex workers. I'm like, oh, they're both really different brands of awful. And the distinguishing between that and then knowing it can't coexist was also just that was just really fun to watch on screen, dude.
I bet The Boys writers room just has a board that's complete with like all these different characteristics of how somebody can be awful. And then like, yeah, I think we got about like 100 different items here. We can toss them around to different characters.
Stormfront was particularly awful last season. So yeah, I'm glad they came up. I'm glad they came up with new awful things. How many more can we find?
Yeah, it's just because they're different brands of awful, and if you put the three of them in a room together, their brands of awful wouldn't be compatible. Like, at the beginning of the season, we were still laughing about how Homelander was like, yo, chill with that Nazi stuff.
That's wrong.
Yeah, like Soldier Boy's an old school, drunk, abusive, like just old man. Homelander's a sociopath, media obsessed, like movie star, and then Stormfront's just a straight up Nazi. And they could never get along with each other, but we can all sit and hate them equally. Shout out to the writers. That's hard to do. Different brands of awful.
I didn't hate Soldier Boy as much as I hated Homelander.
Oh, I love Soldier Boy. He's my favorite character this season because he's just he's so fun. Dude,
I don't know if I loved him.
Nah, bro. Every time that man was on
screen,
I
see you in a
laughing.
Soldier Boy costume.
Yeah. No, God, no. But just,
you're the new Todd.
You know, I didn't think it was it was so genuine. Like, it was crappy, but I'm like, yo, this man really just doing him. like it's not a front. Like, you know, when he shot the two church people, and it's just like, yo,
he just
that was awful, but he was right. He says, I don't want courage. I don't have shell shock. You just, oh man, he was a very fun character to watch on screen.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to explore more about his quote-unquote, you know, trauma or whatever he's been through in the future. I feel like not. I don't know that you need a whole lot of that. We kind of saw some of that this year. All right, so Soldier Boy is a villain. Savon, you're into it. To me, Homelander was still the villain. I mean, there's just no way around it. Soldier Boy was a part of the puzzle, but to me, he wasn't the villain, right? And a lot of his stuff that he did was accidental. Homelander stuff is not accidental. When I say accidental, when he like exploded in the middle of New York or wherever he was, that wasn't on purpose. He was having the
he was having a
flashbacks.
PTSD. Yeah, that was a PTSD trigger. Absolutely.
Right. And maybe even at the hero-gasm.
He came with malicious intent. He came looking for smoke.
Would you say he came with malicious intent at hero-gasm? I'm just like, ugh.
Oh damn, my B.
It's a new record, new album by Savon.
But I do agree with you. Like, the show wanted Soldier Boy to be worse, and they tried to make him feel worse at the end. But I think there's just so much of a history of Homelander. It's like, yo, he's still the bigger threat, and we as the audience are going to probably feel the same.
Well, and we relate to Soldier Boy in the sense that Soldier Boy is like, no, that guy has to go. He is obviously terrible and evil, and you guys have convinced me this, so, like, let's go ahead and end this. I mean, all of us at home are like, yes, let him do it. Yes. Go ahead and end Homelander. So it's hard to really hate or really not identify with Soldier Boy in that way, because we can see he's opposed to Homelander. We know how egregiously bad Homelander is. The one thing that I am not sure why this happened, they sidelined Stan Edgar pretty early on in the series or the season, maybe episode 3 or 4, and he never came back. Well, did Giancarlo Esposito have to go shoot another thing? You know, was he off shooting Mandalorian? I'm not sure.
Hey, man,
so
Better Call Saul is. And that's the thing that's going to win Emmys here, so I can't hate on the dude.
All right, fair. I mean, maybe that's why, but I just couldn't believe that they didn't bring him back. There seemed like he always had another plan, another backup, another contingency, and
he's still in play for sure as a character.
One little PR post was enough to take him down. Like, that just seems not.
They seem like they were setting him up for something much bigger.
That's what I thought.
I
don't think he's done. I mean, his character. First of all, his character isn't dead, so he's not done. He still exists in a position of influence. I just think they probably sidelined him out the season because there's a lot of other characters who are already kind of setting up in an antagonistic role. And removing him was good in that you got to put Homelander in that being out of his depth trying to lead situation, which is like, okay, I think that was the trade-off that the writers were going for. Take him out, but I mean, they still could have had him appear and kind of like say, hey, it's not so easy, is it? But I think Stan Edgar is too important and powerful of a character to not appear next season, and they're going to figure out how to use, especially with Victoria doing the whole like presidential run thing, the whole Victor Veep line that they're going to do. So
yeah, I mean, I was going to say that not only was it Stan Edgar who got sidelined, but also Victoria, who at the end of season 2, we're made to feel like, oh, she is the new impending threat that we really got to, gird ourselves for. And it seemed to be suggesting that early on in season 3 too. But then she kind of disappears into the ether of all the other storylines and just suddenly reemerges at the very end. So that, that was like another writing issue with the show, is that they keep feinting that we're going to go in one direction, and then really we just go back to the tried and true.
They don't want to kill anybody off.
Yeah, and so now the head popper, who's very fascinating, and I want to know what her gambit is, we're going to have to wait another season on that. And actually, now that I think about it, another character that they did that with was Black Noir, who somehow turned out into maybe had probably more of an interesting character. There's much more that they could have done with him. And you feel like they're giving him this weight, they're giving him this the animated treatment and a backstory, and all for it to just culminate in him getting punched through the gut. Yeah, like, come on, there must have been something meant more for him. Like otherwise, why give him the screen time? Why build him up as this really dangerous character that everybody is afraid of, if that's ultimately going to be his demise?
And it didn't even serve to build Homelander up, because we already know how crazy and violent and off the wall Homelander is.
The only thing it served to do was to show to like his last little people, hey, Noir was my actual friend and I killed him. So y'all, it's meant to like I guess show, but I mean,
they already knew that.
Right, yeah, but you didn't have to. They did Black Noir so dirty. It was so like the build up was great. His character development was great. His relationship with Soulja Boy, I was like, oh wow. No, especially because Noir in the comics is nothing at all like what he is in the show. So it was a completely original, new conception they took the character. And so I'm thinking, oh, we're gonna go some really unique like in the comic, he's not even white. So the fact that they even had his character and again made his race kind of relevant to what his story was, and then just did the whole et tu brute killing his friend thing, I'm like, yo, that was probably one of my least favorite parts of the season, because almost anything else could have still had his death happen, but he could have fought Soldier Boy at the end or something. But
oh yeah, totally.
He could have been
Make
in the
it more
Soldier
meaningful.
Boy fight, and then he still dies. There's a million ways they could have did it. I was so disappointed. Black Noir deserved better. Irving deserved better.
We hardly knew you.
Start the hashtag campaign, Savon. I'll retweet it. So that wraps up our season 3 of Boys. If you had to give it a letter grade or a score, what are you going with, Brian? Season 3 by itself.
I still give it a high score despite all the flaws that we just spent half an hour, 40 minutes pointing out. It's still a really great ride and, one of the most entertaining shows on TV. So I'm gonna give it a B.
A B for one of the most entertaining shows on television. B.
Hey man, like it's gonna get docked a few points for all those missteps, right?
Not even B plus. B.
I was thinking about it.
Okay.
B sounds right.
Savon.
I give it like a B plus. I mean, all the same reasons for Brian. The big thing for me, and I said this about Spider-Man, I say this about most movies or shows or anything, the ending is very important to me. You can't have an amazing ride and then the climax of it all is just like a dud. Because that retroactively takes away from the larger experience. At least for me, it does.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, like think about it. No one wants to rewatch Game of Thrones because the ending was so bad. So
it was so bad.
Yeah, so even if we don't want to admit it, I think we intuitively know we hold endings in very high regard. So that's the only thing I really take away from it. Like otherwise, the show would have been a solid A. The ending was very disappointing for me, and so I had to dock some points.
I mean, we know this from sports. James Harden can't be an elite player. He's amazing player. Doesn't show up in the postseason. What's the point?
Yeah, you gotta
land it.
Yeah, and the ending is where Emmys are won, right?
Yeah, I didn't dock it as much for the ending on this one. Game of Thrones for sure. Jesus, that was an awful last season, and we might talk about this later, but with House of the Dragon coming, I don't know if I actually want to dive in. Jen was like, we need to watch that, and I was thinking in my head, like, do we? Because I don't know. I mean, I still have the bad taste of season 8 in my mouth, but I thought this was a 9 out of 10. I was engaged throughout. I was looking forward every week to watching it because of how interesting the storylines were, how crazy and unexpected a lot of the events that could happen were, and how I knew and I could recognize throughout the show that they were building in these examinations of bigger ideas like populism, nationalism, white supremacy, violence, and toxic masculinity, obviously, throughout, but also the ways in which women exist in those spaces, the toll that it takes on them, and obviously just Homelander being someone who needed to die, and me wanting every week to see, okay, well, is this the week they're going to do it, and how are they going to do it if they do it? I mean, it just, to me, they built that up so well, and I don't even know what technical things they did to do it. I just know that every week I wanted to watch more and more. So 9 out of 10, I couldn't imagine too many ways in which they could make it better, except maybe, like you said, the ending could have been a little bit more focused.
Instead of them punching Soldier Boy, they punch Homelander, and suddenly that B plus turns into like an A.
Yeah.
And seriously. And if Ryan actually fought, oh my God.
Yeah,
that would have been
snuck,
really cool.
I will say this, though, Wes, about the show, and I say this about a lot of other shows. I respect that sometimes writers are really playing the long game with certain plot lines and build up. So I acknowledge that a show's season can retroactively get extra points because, what I thought was maybe bad writing at the time turned out to really just be patient. This will pay off. That being said,
this isn't a movie where it does need to have a finale, right? This is a TV show where there's ostensibly probably another season coming.
Yeah, we know that the story isn't over. This was the finale of this section of the story, but we know that there's more to come, right? And so my big thing is, I feel like next season has to be the last season of the show.
Really?
Yeah, agreed.
There's
they cannot
the
draw
conflict,
this out.
the conflict with Homelander and just the nature of his power set lends itself to there being a climax where there's no like putting the toothpaste back in the tube type thing. Like there's no after this, the status quo has to be drastically shifted because Homelander is just such a powerful being that something has to happen, right? Something has to give. I don't know how you could possibly do another season of just his antics and stuff not being just globally criticized and like him not even be able to be kind of normal. And then they do another. I don't know how you could do a whole nother season of that. And at this point, all the players on the board who can really hurt him.
I'm just thinking that's what we all said about Donald Trump, and yet he's going to come back in 2 years and run for president. So but the problem is that real life doesn't have an immediate finale that you need to do. This is
and
a
nobody's
show,
writing it.
Yeah, this is a show where the writers have control over where they take this, and so I don't think you can do another 2 seasons of just Homelander just doing whatever and there's no consequences. There's no characters we've established that, from who we know, who can really harm him at this point. And I'm not saying that that's a good or a bad thing, but like Maeve's off the table, Black Noir's dead. They actually killed off or removed a decent amount of characters, kind of, but not the main core ones. But the main core ones aren't threats to Homelander. So unless we need to have Homelander snap and actually turn against the world, like he said he would in the beginning of the season. And this is gonna be a Game of Thrones thing. If you stretch this out and it goes on too long, people are gonna just stop caring because it's just Homelander doing whatever and twirling his mustache, flying away.
Yeah.
They need to wrap this story up. Everybody, to your point, had their growth, right? Like, so-and-so had his growth. had his growth. Frenchie had his growth. Everybody's getting... The thing is, The Boys is not as dark and nihilistic as they want you to think it is. They show a lot of depraved stuff on screen, but not a lot of characters really just get effed over in ways that characters in a lot of other shows do. Like, who's really gotten screwed over in the show out the main people?
Yeah. It doesn't leave you feeling
they've all gotten screwed.
Depressed.
No,
not
permanently.
No one really has a bad ending. Like MM, for all the awful stuff he's been through, has a healthy relationship with his daughter and does the co-parenting thing. Butcher's always been a piece of trash, but he's still succeeding power to the group. Frenchie and Kimiko have made peace with their past and all that, and have tried to and are actively moving on from it.
Yeah,
Huey and Starlight have their relationship.
Starlight got raped.
Yeah, but like the show doesn't dwell on it, right? It hasn't become this debilitating thing that she's constantly depressed and just completely demolished by that one assault.
There are way more depressing shows. They kind of just like
bring it up every now and again, and she moves on.
Which is like Breaking Bad.
How the show deals with stuff.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a point where, like, oh my God, we think these main characters are just going to slit their wrists because everything is so awful. The show doesn't treat things that way.
Maeve got a happy ending that Loki, her character, didn't deserve because she probably should have just died in that sequence. She gets a legit, you lose your powers, you get to live a life with the love of your life, off the grid, happy ending. Like, they could have just killed her and it would have been way more sad. The show might be violent and gritty and depraved, but from a writing perspective, they're not really, there's way more depressing, awful things happen to good people shows out there. The Boys isn't really one of those.
Yeah, it's not bleak.
And that lends itself to no one's getting killed off, like talking about it. Like, if Huey or Starlight, one of them just got brutally killed and there's no justice, I would have felt a little differently. But people more or less getting what they want or are progressing.
All right, people at home listening, what did you think of The Boys? Did you think it was a 9 or a B? Where are you on this?
B plus.
At confidently_pod, hit us up on Instagram. Savon's been managing the account. He's been throwing up all kinds of memes, some questions. Make it interactive. We'd love to hear from you. Also, tell your friends about our show. Let me tell you, if you're enjoying this, they will too. We just love talking about this stuff, bouncing our ideas off of each other, but we'd also like to incorporate more of your ideas and get more listeners and talk to more people. We'll see you next week.
Indeed.
What are we going to talk about next week? Oh, Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel.
Yeah, we got some Ms. Marvel content coming up. And then, that Harley Quinn show's coming up. So we're going to probably do some content on that in the future. House
of the Dragon is coming soon. There's all kinds of things coming soon, guys. So we're going to be excited.
I got a new couch. Let's talk about that,
Oh, yeah, that's going to be a great
just like update people on what's going on in the culture.
Nice. Nope. Did you guys go see it?
I did.
Ooh.
I didn't.
Maybe we'll talk about Nope on the next one, too.
I go see that, too.
See you laters.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
incredible.